configurations, what would that look like in 3D? And you'll see through here too. Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. This is well before the days of ray tracing, so to speak, and so I'm really trying to work it out brute force. And I eventually start having to work it out with trigonometry to go, what is the because I'm gonna have to put this into a basic line, an H plot, plot a point from this point to this other point, and so I'm literally having to do high school trig, which was eventually the way I came up with doing the 3D graphics.
Because believe it or not, that was first-person stuff back in the day.
Exactly, and this is not my handwriting. So this is my dad. So this is when I would get stuck and I'd be going like, I'm just not figuring it out. I'd actually call my father, who has, I think you probably know, is an astronaut. So he was an engineer extraordinaire. So he was like, okay, Richard, let me help you through this here. And so he would help me actually figure out the proper trig.
I'm only working on this space thing, but I guess I'll help you with your video game.
Exactly right. Yeah, and this is also this is a combination of my father and myself, kind of working out that bits of geometry. And then once I had it working. Oh, this is a favorite. So. If you think about the random dot patterns for, like, this is water or grass or mountains, the way I had to do that is on an apple, even column dots were one color, odd column dots were another color, and then actually that was true for only 7 out of 8 values within a byte. The 8th bit was actually a color bit that would shift from the green-violet to the orange-blue palette, what those would be. So I would actually have to draw tiles on graph paper, like you see here. I would then convert that, what I thought would look like good water, I'd have to convert it to binary. And so I would convert those dots to ones and zeros. I would then convert those into hexadecimal, keeping in mind the hidden color bit that what doesn't show up on those. Then I would type these hex values into memory by poking it one at a time into memory. And then I have to write a piece of code that copied these 32 bytes into the screen area of RAM that hopefully would then show up something on screen. And if it didn't look like water, I then have to go like, okay, well, which part did I screw up? Is it because I drew graphs dots in the wrong place, or I converted to binary incorrectly, or I converted to hex incorrectly, or I poked it into memory incorrectly, or I copied the blocks of the screen incorrectly? And so any one of those could have been wrong, and so then I had to... obviously, it took a while to straighten out.
Oh my God, coding is so hard, you guys. I just learned Java, and I can't figure out object references, and it sucks.
And then look, here's like had to calculate monsters. Those are the early creatures that were in them. And it's literally just all the XY coordinates that prior to scaling, those little draw vector things had to create.
I love it.
And the prototype map for Ultima 2, which is the first time I used Moon Gates, which I ripped off from Time Bandits.
Time Bandits, yeah.
And when I saw that map in Time Bandits, I was so convinced that it had to be in Ultima from that point forward. That not only did it have to be Moon Gates, and including time travel, but I went back to the movie Time Bandits over and over again. This was before videotape, or before it was out on videotape at least. And I go back and try to draw a little bit more of the map to try to figure out if their map had any logic. And when I finally got the whole map deciphered, it turns out their map had no logic.
No logic.
But mine had logic. So mine actually, the first symbol was what time period the gate would show up in. The second symbol was what time period you would be taken to if you entered that gate. But it was actually very complex, and frankly, I think too complex. But it worked, and it was all rational.
I'm just amazed that you have kept everything and it still exists.
Slip of paper.
I remember back in the day, I was playing Ultima 4, Ultima 5. I had a map. I had a map of Britannia, and I had written down the phases of the moon gates and where each phase led. I was that into the game.
This is interesting because this is actually, I'm surprised to see this. This shows you how long I sometimes percolate on things before I use them. Like Runic, I stole really from Tolkien, but went back to the original, Druidic runes to make my own slight variation. The symbolic language that was in Tabula Rasa, I worked on more contemporaneously. But there's another language that I've been working on going back to literally the beginning, that has never shown up in any game yet. The closest was Gargish in Ultima, which is intended to be phonetic. And so this is breaking down all sounds based upon whether they're voiced. Like if you think of let me use there's 4 letters that are largely the same from a mouth position: B, P, F, and V. And so if you think of B and P, the B sound and a P sound, they're really the same with your mouth and lips. The only difference is whether it's voiced with your vocal cords. B, P, V, P. And then if you think of 2 more letters, V and F, V, F, V and F, it's also the same positions. One's voiced and one's voiced. But the V and F and the B and P only differ from the V and F by being what's called plosive. The plosive sound associated with it. And so all 4 of those letters or sounds really can be used as the same letter root with an indicator as to whether it's plosive and an indicator as to whether it's voiced. And if you break down all sounds, you actually only get to about 5 basic roots. And so 5 mouth positions plus plosive and voiced would give you every letter of the alphabet. And including all the Germanic things like ach and k, the sounds that we don't use in the English language. And so I've been toying with this literally from the beginning, and it is still yet to show up in a game. But I've already been working on it now for Shroud of the Avatar. But hopefully we'll get it in there.
Tolkien was huge into linguistics. Just
Yeah.
he invented
It's
the whole.
awesome that your brain works in so many different ways that you're also working on your own freaking language.
Yeah,
Your brain is huge.
And this is Ultima 3 has this little animated sequence of
Little
the
fight in the
people.
dragon, yeah.
This is me working it out, so that's actually it. I drew it on because again, there's no art tools.
Yeah.
Don't forget, there's no paint tool. I literally had to draw everything on graph paper and then manually figure out a way to get it into the screen. Even the animation of the word that says Lord British, I actually had to graph it on graph paper and then plot each one of those points, individually. And of course, plagiarizing more of my best friends. There's like a Star Trek-ish looking thing, as well, of course, as TIE fighters and such.
What?
There's the front. There's the Enterprise.
I don't see that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see what else there is in here. That's good fun. The land speeder. I wonder what that was stolen from.
The air car?
Yeah, the air car. Yeah, exactly. All the different forms the Ultima 1 map could take. The different subcontinents. All the little shops for Ultima 1. Different shapes of the land masses.
Your artwork got better over time.
Yeah, it did. Planning out even the character creation screens. Oh, and again, there was, before it was Ultimatum. And so the true original title. And the weapons. All right, there you go. So there's some really old
That
junk.
was awesome.
But
Right?
and let's see. The one I was really trying to find. I'm not even sure this is it. I might have to go back and dig out some more. But by the time you get up to planning out tile sets, it's it's interesting as the industry has gotten more modern. As artists that you hire today are obviously infinitely superior to the non-artists of us who started back in the beginning. But there's still something that every time we build a new project and every time we bring in new people, I have to go through this description again. And that is, if you're going to build a minimum set of tiles to build like coastlines or rivers that flow, especially if it's like a little river that can have a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn or a branch or and then expand to a wider river or then open into the ocean, there's a set that you need to build, of clockwise turns, counterclockwise turns, etc. That is a minimal set. And what a lot of people do is they just start building parts and pieces, and they end up building a lot more pieces than are necessary. And so this planning that I did back in those early days is still the process that we end up using to this day. But what I was trying to find was a planning book that I think might still be back in
This
my...
is like the final, right? You didn't just do it in one shot and get it right on that first one, did you? Because don't those? Okay,
well,
so you
it's in
built
pencil.
the
It's in pencil, so I probably erased these and corrected them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's presumably the final. There may have been an earlier draft.
Yeah.
But over the years, I actually got pretty good at kind of staying consistent with the approach to make sure that it was not
It makes sense.
didn't need to be redone. This is kind of interesting too because to save efficiency, we used to put all the dungeons into one map. And so these outlines would say this is actually one area of one dungeon, if you know what I mean, and we just kind of packed them in around each other into tightly packed spaces.
This is back when you had to actually be efficient when it came to
Everything.
disk space,
Yeah, exactly.
because you could run out.
And usually did.
Solve problems all the time.
Okay, well I need to go back and get, let me get another document. That's not the one. No, I was going to try to pull up here for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a picture of madness.
One man's madness. Descent into madness. They're just scribbles. They mean nothing.
Can you imagine like walking into a cell and just seeing like on the walls just nothing but this? Connect the cuts, connect the cuts, connect the cuts. Richard, it's time. Richard, it's time for your bath. I'm making my game, doctor. He's got it drawn all over his face.
It's too bad Richard wasn't in here to hear this. Hilarious.
I believe this is figuring out what monsters spawn where in Ultima 6. Because, just by Skara Brae, there's those Mongbats and Fighters. And then there's Bats by Horns' house. So I think this is figuring out where the monsters spawn.
Let's see if I agree with you.
And giant ants.
Oh yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly it. Spawn distribution and density. And one of the things that was great about this era is that it was thought through in this way. Literally the whole spawn plan for the world was conceived in one unit, which meant that there was sort of a logic and a flow to not only the level of monsters, but the ecology had an ebb and a flow to it that felt reasonable. As teams got bigger and bigger, starting about here, it becomes harder and harder to keep everyone on the same page. You know what I mean? It's that you end up getting little pockets of individual creativity, but to keep a broad plan together that is consistent for all parts it gets harder and harder over the years. But in here, I think, is the thing I was going to try to just pull out. Let me see which one of these it's in. Not that one. Ultima 7, the black gate and the black cover.
It's the black book.
It's a black book about the game in black. Is it here too? Oh, maybe out of luck again. I thought it sure was in this box. But what I'm trying to find... here it is. Here's one. Here's an example. Is when you're trying to tell an interactive story, one of the things I find interesting about that problem is you're trying to simultaneously create plot threads, a way where you can go, if I really want you to find the big magic item in the end, it means I want a series of challenges and clues to lead you to that point. And it's one problem to just write that down linearly and say, okay, here's a bunch of linear threads add it together. You also have to make sure that as you go from town to town, you're going to run into the beginning of some threads in a town, but there will be people in that town that are really part of the middle of another thread. And so you want to make sure they don't either spill the beans too soon because you're not on that thread, and or make sure that the density of you don't have some towns that you can come into and there's just nothing happening. I'm either at 10% of the game or 50% of the game when I come into the town for the first time, and it's important there's something for me there whether I'm at 10% of the game or 50% of the game.
Which is a difficulty in telling RPGs. People complain all the time that RPGs are too linear.
Right.
Which is kind of a problem I never really call. I don't consider that a problem, is because stories are linear. You can't tell a story in random order.
Right.
So so in some ways I'm like, I get the fact that you want to run around and do stuff, and the fact that I think that's a bigger problem nowadays is that too many stories are sandbox.
It's a huge move to sandbox right now.
Is that they actually seem really unfocused.
Right. And And so what I was trying to do here, though, is find the right balance.
Right, exactly. And that's tough.
Yeah, and so the way I would do it is I would have 2 notebooks. One notebook would be the linear stories, each thread by piece. And then I would take that and then I would break it up into this book, which is broken out by city. And so here's all the names of the towns and cities and places that players might exist, and each character. Like, starting here at Lord British's castle, there's Lord British. And these are all the things that he might want to talk about. Like the fact that the underworld is collapsing, or that Britannia is under attack by the gargoyles who are coming up through the dungeons, or that they're taking over the shrines, and the Shrine of Compassion has actually fallen, and Sir Geoffrey has been sent with an envoy to free that shrine.
But what? I mean, who are the gargoyles? Hey.
Those guys right there.
Oh.
And then if you ask him, little bracket was, he responds to the term orb, and then what he would be happy to say about that orb. And Sherry the Mouse. We'll talk about Sherry the Mouse. And anyway, here are all the other people that you would find in Lord British's castle. And so this was a way that I could basically play test the story without the game existing. And so by city. And since it's broken out by city, I could then easily flip to a place like here we are at the Abbey and go, how do I feel about the Abbey? Look, there's only 3 pages of notes, and in fact, there's only relevant information on 2 characters. One guy's wife, and who's this other person in here? The vintner at the brewery, and the winery. And I'm going, those are really the only 2 people. So, in hindsight, or I'm not sure if this was actually the final version or not here, but I might look at this if I was playtesting it through myself and go, wow, the Abbey's kind of thin. Ever. And I'm going like, wow, do I care about that? Is it important that the Abbey has more meat on its bones than this represents? Which you wouldn't necessarily tell if you were reading through the script linearly, because again, it's too hard to know how many times the threads cross in a town when you look at it linearly. So I always do my games both linearly and geographically, shall we say, concurrently, because I think it actually helps make the game feel right. So this sandboxy type exploration doesn't interfere and instead becomes supportive of the linear story threads that you're trying to tell through the gameplay experience. And to my knowledge, I'm the only one that kind of does this discipline. There probably are others, but I just haven't met them.
Yeah, because on the flip side, here's where people rightly complain about linearity, is because in Ultima 9, you can literally not go anywhere except where the plot requires you. You have to go to pause, because you can't go anywhere else because there's rocks blocking the road.
Right.
And you go you can't even ask Lord British well, why don't you just send some guys over there and move the friggin' rocks? He's just like, I'm sorry, Avatar, there's rocks blocking the road, and I don't know what to do. And you're like,
they're big rocks. Come on, they were big rocks.
It's you got guys send big men with horses.
But then the game
we
would
can
be
build
over.
this castle, but those rocks are way too big.
But I'm scared. The Guardian columns and...
Exactly. You understand my plight as Lord British very well.
He's like, but it's cold out there.
Exactly, precisely, it is.
Why do I work for you again? Well, no, because the workers are on strike. He doesn't pay the household very well. That was in Ultima Underworld 2, where he's treating the servants poorly, apparently.
Right.
And they go on strike.
Yeah, well, exactly. They're servants.
Which, by the way, don't let that get around.